Welcome back. Ekiti State Governor Ayodele Fayose has described the outburst of the All Progressives Congress against the removal of INEC Chairman Attahiru Jega as, quote, a mere comedy. He said the president can sack Jega if he so wished and that the heavens would not fall. He accused the APC of acting as, in his words, as if Nigeria actually belongs to them. He added that members of the APC who are opposed to Jega's removal have their own agenda. Now, the controversial governor further added that INEC Chairman Jega is partisan, saying by his actions and utterances, he had already demonstrated his bias in support of the APC. Now, for some time now, we have not heard from them, but the movement for the actualization of the sovereign state of Biafra, MASOB, is now spitting fire over INEC Chairman Professor Attahiru Jega. The group says it would resist election in the South as a whole if Professor Jega refused to step down as INEC Chairman. In a press conference held at the MASOB headquarters in Owerri, Imo State, MASOB leader Ralph Wazurike said the resolve of his group stemmed from allegations of bias against the INEC boss. In his address entitled Jega Must Go, Wazurike said if INEC Chairman should conduct the general elections, it would lack credibility and unavoidably throw the nation into serious crisis, adding that the safety of lives and property of Igbo people in the north and other parts of Nigeria would be targets for destruction. Now, there has been allegations that Jega might be removed from office before the March 28 presidential elections. When asked if he had any plans to remove the INEC chairman, here is what Jonathan had to say at the last presidential media chat he had in Abuja.
A number of people used to tell me that, look, Mr. President, we've been watching their media adverts and so on, that the messaging from your camp is somehow confusing. There are too many messages that go out. And sometimes I call the people, and more than 80% of those who sponsor these messages, we don't even know. That's why somebody wakes up, they say, 10 reasons why President Jonathan should continue, and another person wakes up and say 1,000 reasons why. You don't even know them. So it's not what somebody says, whether that person is a fan of Jonathan or has been defending Jonathan. It's different from Jonathan. So what does Jonathan And if you ask Jega, Jega will tell you, I appointed members of INEC. INEC is a standing executive body defined by the Constitution. It's Mr. President that appoints every commissioner in INEC, both the national commissioners and the REC, the resident electoral commissioners, are my appointees. So if I feel that Jega is not good enough for obvious reasons, then I can, by there are provisions in the Constitution that gives the person who appoints the power to remove. And I've not told anybody that I'm going to remove Jega. I've never said so. Well,
the president explaining his position, his take on it, and actually I don't think it has changed. Now, still on the purported plan to remove the INEC boss, journalists seeking some reactions from the commission asked one of its national commissioners what the commission makes of all the controversy. Here's what that commissioner said.
Well, I think that this is not an area I should dabble into. The appointment of the chairman of the commission is a responsibility of Mr. President, and has an endorsement of the National Assembly. Whatever position will be taken has to come from that end. We are not in position to say when, how, when and or how.
Well, let me bring in my guest here to discuss this further. Let me start with you, Mr. Obani. You are a lawyer. I don't know, you heard what the president said there at his last presidential media chat, that he actually has the power. Since he appointed all of them, he actually has the power to fire. And now you're hearing this, some would say, cacophony of voices now coming from different quarters saying, remove him. You heard Governor Fayose, then MASOB now saying, look, this man should resign. He does not have the credibility to conduct a free and fair election. It's quite surprising. This is a man who, you know, most people praised to the highest heavens in 2011 for conducting a very good election. And now suddenly, people, you know, some people don't want him.
Yeah. I heard the president clearly during the media chat, you know, where he said, I appointed Jega, I can also remove him. And he is not 100% correct with that statement. Jega and the rest of other commissioners actually were appointed on the recommendation of the president, and the House endorsed the appointment of these officers.
The Senate, yeah.
And immediately they are appointed, their employment become tenured. It's for a certain period of time, and that is for 5 years, and it's 5 years certain. Now, the same constitution that made provision for this process of appointing the INEC chairman and the rest of the commissioners also specify the mode and process of removal. If the man is unable to discharge his constitutional duty, or there are some issues that disqualifies him from continuing in office as INEC chairman or a commissioner within INEC body, then you have to support that by going to the House to present an address of the reason, which is verifiable. And then the Senate, has to muster enough percentage of vote that will say that this man is not qualified to continue in that office, and that is 2/3 majority. It didn't say even 1/3. It didn't even say simple majority. It said 2/3 members of the Senate must concur to the removal of INEC chairman.
Can the president take the kind of action he took against the former CBN governor?
That was also wrong, because CBN governor was pursuing this matter in court. But when he became the mayor of Kano, he felt contented in life, and that is what he has been praying for all his life. And he got to that position, so he felt, what do I need, the issue of governorship of the central bank, and then he withdrew the case. But if he had pursued this matter to Supreme Court, I tell you that that particular action of the president would have been nullified, because a tenured
But that would seem to have emboldened the president.
That's the reason he's saying that he has the power to fire. Somebody was making the statement that if the president does, that the heavens won't fall, because there was a particular governor that his job was tenured, and he was removed in a manner that we consider very illegal, and how heavens did not fall. So he felt, if this one is done, but you see, it's a different ballgame entirely, that this is an election year. And as I said earlier, the foundation of Nigeria is actually not too strong. And we have stressed the foundation of this country in the Nigerian Biafran War, and we managed to survive. That particular foundation was also shaken in 1993 during the Abiola crisis, and this house managed to survive. But I tell you, if this foundation is shaken in 2015, the way everyone is building up tension, I doubt whether the foundation of this country will survive any further stress. That's why the political actors and actresses must be careful in what they say, in what they do, especially concerning following legality and constitutionalism. If a president has sworn to uphold the provisions of the Constitution, so I see no reason why the person will now go in breach of the constitutional pro. If he does that, that is an impeachable offense. So I think that the best the president can do, if he has any reason to remove Jega, is to follow the constitutional process of presenting this matter before the Senate, and the Senate will look at it and get a verifiable reason why Jega should be at this point in time removed. This is a man that has been pinpointed and have been making preparation for this election. If you bring a new person, the Senate has to confirm that person. And it takes a process. The person has to understudy what is going on in INEC. It doesn't mean there won't be election holding this year, if any. If it's going to hold this year, no longer in March 28 and then April 11. So that's why some of us have to rise up as civil society, the conscience of the nation, to say, no, you can't remove Jega. And even if you want to remove him, go through the provisions of the Constitution. If you do it, and we see that you follow the constitutional provision, we'll give you a pass mark. But if you don't follow it, you will create unnecessary crisis and tension in the country, and nobody needs that tension at this point.
I think it's quite surprising that we're hearing more of this as we move closer to the elections. Do you have any fears at all?
I think a lot of us have fears. I mean, beyond the scale and the level of the 2011 election, we have fears because the forces that are ranged against one another, especially from the perspective of the two major political parties, are much more formidable than they were in 2011. So much money are being brought to bear. Of course, it is difficult to match the federal government, the federal might, money for money. But we have seen gladiators who have also been able to amass a lot of resources, also being able to stand almost toe-to-toe with the ruling party. And what it means again is that even though Nigerians might be looking at these two political parties, sometimes some Nigerians as perhaps not representing the very best in terms of what is on offer, but on the basis of the fact that a lot of them believe that it is either going to be the PDP or the APC, a lot of Nigerians have taken sides. So if you're going to have about 55, 60, 65 million voters come out in this election to vote, you're going to have them take positions, maybe essentially with regards, at least at the presidential level, to these two political parties. Now, that makes this a very, big electorate that you don't want to trifle with by manipulating the electoral process. You understand? And that is significant. And that is why there's so much worry. Of course, there's also the rumor of the police planned strike to take place on the 28th. The police hierarchy has also been warning about that. That is the day the election is going to hold. And for those of us, for people who have been talking about the possibility of people wanting to broach the issue of, for instance, in an interim government and so on, there's a realization that no interim government is ever going to be possible or take place unless there is crisis that is generated in the system. That is the only thing that can lead to something else, because nature abhors a vacuum. If you remember the interim government of Ibrahim Babangida, exactly, it was the crisis of the annulment of that election and so on. Again, the malfeasance of the political actors. The reality is that the political actors are losing control of the nation as it is today. The kind of exchanges that we are seeing, instead of being intellectual exchanges that are based on issue, you hear all kinds of mudslinging from one side to the other and so on. All of this is also aimed at inciting, because you have supporters who have taken sides on, the opposite divide and so on. So these things are, a serious cause for worry. And so the Jega issue, I think, is a very, very, a critical issue. But the president is the person in the eye of the storm now, more than any other person in this country. Only his action now will either plunge the country into very deep crisis that might be very deep, that we might, be unable to come out of that crisis easily, or it pulls Nigeria away from the brink. And I think that the most important personality in the entire scenario that is playing out now is not even the president, it's not even the APC candidate or Novo of the NCP or the other candidates, Shonaya and the rest. Yeah. It is Jega today. And so if you make a move against Jega, do not also forget the interests of the international community. When that election was postponed, for whatever reason now, INEC did not exactly cover itself in glory. But when the election was postponed, from the United States to the British government to the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, and so on and so forth, everybody expressed deep regret at the postponement of that election and warned and advised that under no circumstances must the election be postponed any further. If the government or this government decides to do otherwise, any problem, any crisis that emanates from that particular action that is traceable to that action, I tell you that principal actors, who were involved in provoking that kind of situation, if this country descends into anarchy, will not be able to escape the consequences of that anarchy. And that's why we must be careful.
I get you quite well, but very quickly before we go, there's one other issue I want you to comment on, which is it has to do with the former Minister of State, Obanikoro. Now, he seems to be in the eye of the storm, actually, over his nomination as minister. The Senate has now shifted his screening twice over mounting calls for him to stand down for his alleged involvement in the rigging of the last governorship election in Ekiti State. Obanikoro is among senior PDP officials secretly recorded on a tape giving orders to a very senior military officer during the election to arrest some APC leaders in Ekiti. In fact, he was specifically heard telling the senior military officer that he was on a mission for the president and that the officer's rise in the military's hierarchy would be dependent on him. Now, students under the aegis of NANS, that is the National Association of Nigerian Students, protested in Lagos over the week, asking the Senate not to clear Obanikoro for ministerial appointment. The students say Obanikoro should go clear his name first before thinking of becoming a minister.
We commend the leadership of the Senate for the wisdom used in managing the issue of screening of Senator Musiliu Obanikoro for ministerial appointment. We, the Nigerian students, hereby state that Senator Musiliu Obanikoro does not deserve being a minister in our dear country, especially when considering the prominent role played by him in the state election scandal, as exposed by Captain Sajikoli. He graciously subverted the people's will in the last governorship election in Ekiti State by convincing with his co-travelers Ayodele Fayose, Dalili Adeshina, Iyola Omisore, and General Muhammad to rig the election in favor of Ayodele Fayose. We are advising Senator Musiliu Obanikoro to take a perpetual leave from politics and leadership of this country, as his actions have not only destroyed the fabrics of democracy in Nigeria, but also arrested the hope of Nigerian students that the idleness of democracy will never be celebrated in Nigeria. Moreover, we had expected that Senator Musiliu Obanikoro, on moral ground, would have taken his time to clear himself before the committee set up by the Inspector General of Police, rather than seeking ministerial appointment.
Mr. Bani, you are a lawyer. I mean, this man has not been convicted in any court of law, and it's like he's been pronounced guilty. Shouldn't the Senate just consider him, you know, just clear him, pending whatever happens in court, if this case were to come up in court? I'm just asking.
Yeah, this is a political time. And political time, if you have such an allegation that you consider very grave, and this is a very grave one, because the initial conduct of the dramatics personnel was to deny that those recordings were not their voices, but later they owned up and said they were their voices, but they were doing a different thing, you know, different from what...
Of course, which is subject to interpretation, because that's the way they saw it, but quite different from how...
Such an allegation in any sense society should not go uninvestigated. What you do is to find out the veracity of that particular tape and find out whether actually there was intention to rig or whether there was any planning that took place, especially when you have mentioned those big names. You know, he was a minister, and he was a minister of state in defense, and some of the things he said was, you know, really, you know, very grave. You know, telling the man that he is here representing the president of the country. So with the president name being used, the president would even be very, very interested in clearing his own name also, because they have mentioned his name. In any country where there is law and order, no country will ever have such a grave allegation against some very important personalities in government that has to do with the rigging of an election in a state within the federation, and you allow that particular matter to be uninvestigated. And meanwhile, you now submitted the name of that person that is allegedly involved in that particular thing to the Senate, and you want him to be cleared. And that's why the entire 3 senators in a particular state have written against the nomination of that candidate, and that's why people in Lagos State, you see the students also protesting that that man is not qualified. Clear his name first. And I think Obanikoro should be interested in also in clearing his name. I hear he has gone to court. That is also an avenue for that matter to be also. But I think the presidency and the government of Federal Republic of Nigeria should be interested in such an allegation of many important personalities, a serving minister, a former, you know, a former senator, or still in the Senate, was involved, and some other, even a minister also was involved. Yes, of the police affair was also involved in that particular thing. So I think the only thing they could have done is to, you know, set up an investigative panel to really look into this issue and clear their name. Achike,
what's your take? You think he should have just gone to clear his name first before coming to submit himself for screening, for ministerial screening?
Well, this is the beauty of providing a legitimate opposition in a country and in a community and so on. Because it means that people with the resources and with the means will not be able to ride roughshod over the people. Of course, for me, maybe based on my own orientation and where I'm coming from, I scrutinize in detail as much as possible the trajectory and the ideological base of these 2 political parties, for instance, and I might not be impressed. But the reality is that in 1999, 2003, and parts of 2007, we had a near unassailable lead at the National Assembly, you know, by the ruling People's Democratic Party. In fact, in 1999, 2003, they had over 2/3 majority of members of National Assembly.
Of course, they do not have that now.
Exactly. And so the fact that this has become an issue is essentially because a formidable opposition, you know, platform more or less has been provided.
If not, you think he would have been cleared?
Or if not, it would have. That is what has always happened in this country.
But should he even have gone to the National Assembly?
Yeah, you also know that even before now, we have had this kind of controversy, maybe of a different kind, but controversial appointment of a minister, you know, an appointee of Olusegun Obasanjo when he was president. That is, well, the media campaign person now of the president.
That's Femi Fani-Kayode.
He was appointed, you know, and had to go to the senators whom he had roundly abused as his fashion, really. You know, and then unfortunately, he met a Senate that was highly critical and disapproving of his antics in the past, and he had to, well, in Yoruba local parlance, he had to dobale, you know, for the Senate, and had to beg profusely before he was allowed. Now, you see, a lot of water has passed under the bridge, and it would appear that the political class in this country are going for broke, and no quarter asked, there's no quarter asked, no quarter given, you know, and that is why some of us are really worried. And so what is happening is that there are some senators on the floor there that are ready to exact fully.
But beyond the issue of politics,
yes.
what do you think should be the ideal?
Well, no, I mean, the ideal issue is, look, abroad, and maybe even in a few African countries, when there's controversy surrounding a particular person. I remember when a boat carrying some immigrants or so, some people, you know, sank in Senegal, killing over 50 people. The minister in charge of that ministry resigned. He had no direct bearing on that particular boat that sank, but there was a sense of responsibility and duty. So he felt he had to do that.
And perhaps the president should have just said...
With regards to this, with regards to the way you have this kind of controversy, you know, dogging your trial, what you want to do is, first and foremost, is because your name is important to you, you want to clear that name. Yes, I agree. When he says, I'm here, you know, on a mission for the president from the Constitution, what the Constitution says is the chief security officer of this country. And so his duty is to ensure safety and security of Nigerians. So if he's there as Minister of Defense for State, for Defense and so on, and he says, I'm here on, you know, presidential mission and so on, perhaps that mission is about the safety of the citizens in Ekiti State. But you cannot take that one only alone. You have to look at all the other things that happen in that particular issue. So when he has this kind of controversy dogging him, I would expect that he will be angry enough that people had associated himself with this kind of ignoble and unpalatable exercise, and then try to clear his name first. And after having done that, he now goes back, his dignity intact.
Okay, I'm just going to give. We're rounding off now because we haven't got time. Do you very quickly now, in just say about 60 seconds, do you think the Senate will clear Obanikoro?
Yeah, from the look of things, he's appearing before them on Tuesday. Ordinarily, they ought not to. They shouldn't. When 3 senators from the same state have raised an objection, and so many petitions against him, and then there is a case in court, in Lagos High Court, against him, against his eligibility even to be a minister. So those issues should impinge on the mind of the Senate, not to clear him for now until those issues are resolved. But I think they maintain a slight majority in the Senate. And since they maintain that slight majority, don't be surprised on Tuesday.
But we also know that some PDP members are
I do not,
okay, there are some PDP members also that are not happy also with Obanikoro.
I do not think he will clear the hurdle. Yeah. Especially if he goes back to the Senate.
I want to believe it's not going to be subjected to voice.
But I tell you,
unless if he goes back to them the way he has been going, nothing is going to happen. There must be some you know, underground, you know,
let me say it before we go. Even the president of the country, President Jonathan, is bent on having Obanikoro as his minister, even under this present dispensation, and they maintain a slight majority in that Senate. That man may likely pass through on Tuesday, but there is a snag. Most of the senators are not coming back, so they're also angry with the president. So the president may not have that majority to have.
And what is wrong in the president just asking him to just withdraw? I mean, this is a moral question. So the president could as well just tell him.
That is one of the issues people have against
the
President
Jonathan. Could
because
simply
most times,
just withdraw the name.
The president does not listen to the people. When he came, he ruled under a very goodwill of the people. But most time he does his things without minding what the people say. The issue of morality, Desiani, as people have been clamoring for his removal. Why he listened to us was with respect to Stella Odua. But even at that, he will have to push him and say, this woman ought not to remain as a minister. So sometimes the president doesn't listen to the majority of it. But now that we are playing politics and he's coming to contest on 28th of March, he may for once listen to us concerning Obanikoro.
Well, we just wait.
Depending on how important he perceives Obanikoro is to him.
Yeah, especially in taking Lagos as a political party.
Well, thank you
which
very
is
much,
the ultimate plan.
Thank you very much for coming on the program. Barrister Chima Ubani, thank you very much for coming.
Onyekachi Ubani.
Onyekachi, sorry. Onyekachi Ubani, thank you very much for coming. And Achikechude, thank you very much, and thank you for your contributions. Well, that's it on the program. You can actually watch it again. It's just simple. Go to our website, tv360nigeria.com. You'll find the program and lots more there. You can also watch us on YouTube by subscribing to our YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/TV360 Nigeria. You can follow us on Google+. Our handle is at TV360 Nigeria, or just like us on Facebook, facebook.com/TV360 online. You can also follow us on Twitter. Our handle is at TV360 online. Thank you very much for watching. We're back again next week.